It's called Fear, Trump in the White House, and it's written by a veteran Washington Post journalist. Within its pages, there are words like idiot, liar, and crazy town. And according to the book, those came from Trump's own aides, including his chief of staff, John Kelly. There are also stories about staff taking extraordinary measures to stop what they saw as Trump's dangerous impulses, like hiding sensitive documents so he couldn't sign them. Aaron Blake has read some of the excerpts. He's already put up some analysis pieces for The Fix on the Washington Post website, and Aaron covers U.S. politics for the newspaper and joins me now. All right, so Aaron, I should just say that we've got some reaction from the White House. This is what Sarah Huckabee Sanders said. In part, this book is nothing more than fabricated stories, many by former disgruntled employees told to make the president look bad. General Kelly said the allegation he called President Trump an idiot is not true. So first of all, what do you make of that response from the White House?
Well, this is actually a pretty standard issue response from the White House. It's basically almost the same as the one they put out after Michael Wolff's book came out. It's similar to the statement that they put out when Omarosa Manigault-Newman started putting out tapes and talking publicly about her time in the White House. This seems to be kind of their stock answer to these kinds of allegations. I would add, though, that this is a different situation now. This is not Michael Wolff, who has his own foibles as an author. This is not Omarosa, who certainly has said many things to get attention over the years. This is a man who has chronicled the last 8 administrations, often in book form, and that makes that kind of a defense a little bit more difficult to pass off.
So in a piece that you wrote earlier today that I just had the opportunity to read, you called this book the most damning portrait of Trump's presidency yet. That's quite a statement.
Yeah, I think, there are certainly elements of what we're reading about from this book that we've seen before. A lot of it really builds upon a narrative that has already been out there. We've already seen reports of staff criticizing the president. We have seen instances in which staff members tried to resign. We've seen reports about the president flying off the handle and trying to do something that his aides wind up talking him out of. But the culmination of all of these things in one place, the detail with which some of these things are told, and the source of this information, which again is Bob Woodward and not Michael Wolff, I think gives it much more gravity, will make it much more difficult for the White House to play off, and ultimately makes this a much more damning portrait of the presidency that we have in front of us right now.
But you hear words like idiot and crazy town, and I don't know that would be shocking to some people that don't like Donald Trump. You've read some advanced excerpts of the book. What part stood out most for you where you think it's particularly damning or particularly concerning?
Well, I think the one anecdote that has stuck out to me is the situation in which the chemical weapons attack had just happened in Syria. The president talked to his foreign policy advisors and basically said that he wanted to go and assassinate Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria. After that happened, according to Bob Woodward's book, Defense Secretary Jim Mattis didn't necessarily try to talk the president out of it. Instead, after that happened, he basically told people that he wasn't going to carry out the order, that they weren't actually going to do these things. And that is a pretty stunning set of circumstances. This is a president who makes suggestions to his national security people and a defense secretary who basically didn't carry out that order. I think that's pretty symptomatic of how things are working in the White House here, and it's certainly not the way it would work in any other White House that we've had previously.
I mean, if you don't like, if you're concerned about Donald Trump ordering these actions, the fact that people are making these decisions who are not elected, does that concern you? I mean, I'm not trying to defend Donald Trump here, but it just seems a little unusual, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other question here is, should a defense secretary be in the position of, saying to the president, oh, yeah, okay, I'll get right on that, and then not actually do it? That's not how things are supposed to work. The fact that somebody like Jim Mattis, who has a wide amount of respect from both sides of the political aisle. A lot of people think he's the one, kind of the glue holding together this administration right now. The fact that he would have to resort to that kind of thing rather than being able to talk the president out of it, I think just speaks to the circumstances that currently exist. But you're right, it is in and of itself a questionable way of doing business that a defense secretary would even have to do that.
I think we still have yet to hear from Donald Trump himself on all of this. You've covered him, you know him in the sense of that. How do you think he is going to react? Do you think this is going to be the kind of book, some of the things in this book that could really set him off?
I would expect there to be a similar reaction to this that we've seen from past efforts, including Omarosa, including Michael Wolff. The president doesn't generally take criticism without hitting back. At the same time, he said some very praising things about Bob Woodward in the past. When the book came out about the Obama administration, the president said that only the Obama White House can criticize Bob Woodward. He even said at the start of a phone call, which we have a recording of on the Washington Post, that he's always been treated fairly by Woodward. So given all of that, the idea that he's suddenly going to turn around and say Woodward is a bad man who is being inaccurate and out to get him, I think it makes that argument just a little bit more difficult.
And then just finally, Aaron, do you think that is there any reason for us not to believe what is in this book? Do you have doubts? Do you have concerns about the sources being anonymous?
I think what's important here is, and this goes back to that phone call that I just talked about between Bob Woodward and the president. Bob Woodward talks about how he sources these things. He said everything is based upon a firsthand account of people who were in the room when this happened. These are anonymous sources, and the use of anonymous sources is always going to lead to questions about whether people actually said the things that you're reporting them saying. That's unavoidable. That's always been the case with these kinds of books in the past. But I think if there's one journalist who can write this kind of book and have people believe his sourcing, Bob Woodward has certainly been that person for a number of years now, for many decades, really, going back to Watergate, of course.
Aaron, we appreciate you taking the time today. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Aaron Blake covers politics for the Washington Post.